It's time for the CyberSecurity News Byte with Jim Guckin.
CyberSecurity News Byte, episode number 56. For May 15th, 2023, car location data of 2 million customers exposed for 10 years, millions of mobile phones come pre-infected with malware, phishing campaign distributes SmokeLoader via fake Invoice, and Crooks using malicious QR codes to steal your money. Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Jim Guckin. This is CyberSecurity News Byte. We talk about the security news out there that I think you need to be paying attention to understand the ebbs and flows of this security world. The first story I actually think is very interesting, and it's something we should be definitely paying attention to, because it's not something that necessarily I would have thought, but then when it came up, it made total sense. Now, we talk a lot about, what a breach looks like in your life, and some of it's kind of easier, but this one I thought was interesting. So our first story this week, Toyota Motor Corporation, the ones who make Toyota, in Japan, have disclosed a data breach, which I think was very interesting because it had car location information as part of the leaked data. There was about 2.15 million customers who were impacted by this breach. It occurred over 10 years, so between November 6, 2013 and April 17th, 2023. So, I mean, kind of recent. And this is all based off a security notice that they had published on their Japanese newsroom website. So, the breach was actually caused by a database misconfiguration, which you should immediately know is a red flag. It pretty much allowed anyone to access the contents of this database without a password. Now, I don't know about you, but it's a little more than a misconfigure. That's not configured at all. And this was actually part of the Toyota Connected Corporation, which if you have a Toyota, this is like the app that lets you control your car or have information based on your car on your phone. So the exposure was the T-Connect G-Link, the G-Link Lite, and the G-Book. This data was exposed between January 2nd, 2012 and April 17th, 2023. Now, the T-Connect, as I said, is the in-car smart service. So it does like voice assistant, customer service, car status, if it tells you what, things came into it, managing your car, and kind of on-the-road emergency help if you need. Some of those cars have that button you push and it calls help in emergencies. Now, the data itself that was exposed was in-vehicle GPS navigation IDs, the chassis number, which not something I was really familiar with, so I had to look it up. It's the VIN number for a car, the vehicle identification number. That's what we call it over here in the United States. The vehicle location information with time data. So, like, it is stamped down to knowing where that is, which is a big whoopsie, out there, and, really possibly could be dangerous. And what I thought was even more amazing was the possibility of video recordings taken from outside of the vehicle having be exposed in this incident. And now that vehicle recording data most likely was between November 14th, 2016 and April 4th, 2023, which is nearly 7 years. And that is just terrifying. I mean, I'm lucky it didn't happen over here, but it's just, could you imagine, if you're talking outside your car, that data could have been there? Now, Toyota immediately, once it was identified, fixed it up, put measures to block access from the outside. Kind of one of those things that should have been done. But I'm glad they got to it. On the bright side now, they pretty much said that there was no evidence so far that the data was, accessed or misused. Unauthorized users could have had access to historical data, and possibly could have had 2.15 million Toyota cars. Now, I think it's interesting because it's something that my initial reaction is something like this is definitely very dangerous, but it is ironically not considered PII, personally identifiable information, mostly because an attacker would need to know the VIN number of the target's car. The VIN number. They need to know the VIN number to be able to do this attack. So maybe that's better. Now, I should mention, though, this is not the first time that there has been a incident. In October of 2022, there was another data breach. And this was also to the T-Connect customer database. And this one happened to be an access key posted on a public GitHub repository. So, not bad things, I guess. So, I mean, luckily it didn't happen over here, but it just goes to show you how much personal information is out there and what you could do with that. So while you may not be able to individually identify a VIN number to a person, it may be kind of hard. It's not impossible. But you could still be able to track that car with this data if it was accessed and they are either not saying anything or it's out there. So there's not much you can do to protect yourself, but it's just making you aware that, as our lives become more interconnected, this is the kind of stuff that car companies track. Your car is constantly speaking to them if you have one of these services. And, well, this is what happens when things are quote unquote misconfigured, or as I like to say, not configured at all. For our second story this week, and this is just amazing, because it streamlined the process of getting malware onto your phone. And you know how much I love malware. And look, a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to get malware onto your device so that they can use it for nefarious means. So this one, Trend Micro researchers in Black Hat Asia start to find that this is, and I quote, a growing problem for regular users and enterprises. And this is caused by when manufacturers start outsourcing their equipment manufacturing to the original equipment manufacturer, OEM. They ship it out to someone else. They don't have the resources to do it. They want to save money. It's a little cheaper. They pay someone else to do this. And when they do this, this gives someone in the manufacturing pipeline the chance to infect products with malicious code as they ship them out. And these firmware, quote unquote, that are being shipped with the phone come with some undesirable features, some silent plugins. And the researchers have found it right now about 80 different plugins, although many of those were not widely distributed in all the phones they have. So what does this mean? That you're probably asking yourself. So if you have or you buy a cheap Android phone, so this is not obviously happening right now, or they haven't detected it right now with the name brand phones, the Pixels, the Apple, the Samsung, the big names in there. These are specifically for the cheaper ones that you probably haven't heard of that are extremely cheap in most of these stores. And once again, this is not something that is easy to detect. So it could be on there, you don't know. But it's not just the phones, any Android device that's made cheap. So smartwatches, TVs, all of this is in there. And the malware that they've detected, the couple different variants of the malware, does some really interesting stuff. Like it turns your device into a proxy, which means that I can act as if it's coming from your phone. So I can steal messages that come into you and sell them to someone who might be interested. I can send SMS messages from your phone and you would never know. Because your social media is probably attached to it, we can take over that. Any kind of online messaging account like WhatsApp on there. Change the ads that you may see and do some kind of click fraud. That's all possible with some of these variants of malware. And one of the objectives is to steal, make money from. If you have a crypto wallet, these are all perfect things in there. But as I said, there's the option of making your device a source of traffic for me. I can use it like a proxy. And there are some marketplaces which are selling this for about 5 minutes of time. So in 5-minute increments. And for the 5 minutes, I rent your phone out or your TV out. I can get the keystrokes on it, the IP address of it, your phone number, the GPS coordinates, send stuff out, surface you, all this stuff, which is really awesome. Except for the people who it's happening to, but for the hackers, this is great. Because all the traffic would trace back to your phone and not necessarily me doing all the malicious stuff in the background. So you need to be very cautious of this, because when you buy these cheap devices, you're paying for that service, especially if you don't have like an unlimited data plan. You are allowing the crooks to do whatever they want with your data. And that could be dangerous. I'm not saying don't buy a cheap phone. Just don't buy a really cheap phone. Yeah. If you're able to do it, splurge a little more on a mid-range phone. But really cheap phones or cheap TVs or cheap watches that work, I mean, you can get them. And we all know these marketplaces, without me having to say any particular names, that run off this stuff. They have the cheap stuff. It's incredibly cheap. It's too good to be good, too good to be real cheap. And you're making yourself a target for hackers. And it's not something that you can find. It's not something that the software might be able to see easily at this point. This is a new trend, and it's built into the very core of these devices. So even if you could detect it, I don't know what you would do to get it out, because you'd have to literally redo firmware on devices. And you know what? The average person doesn't know how to do that. I mean, there are people with, who do technology who may not know how to do that as easy. Some phones have firmware locked on them and they're hard to unlock. So very dangerous trend out there. So the only thing I can tell you to make yourself that make sure that you keep yourself safe is just avoid incredibly cheap devices. For our third story this week is honestly what I'd like to consider myself I wish I could go a week without talking about the current phishing campaign that's getting people, but it still works and they're still catching people. So right now there is a phishing campaign that's been identified by CERT, and the attackers are using compromised email accounts. So they're not pretending to be something else. They're not faking email accounts. They're using accounts they've taken over, and they are sending phishing emails which look like they contain invoices. Now, the target of this attack are computers used by financial accountants. So if you're not a financial accountant, you may get hit in the spray of this, but you're not the one they're targeting. And they want to gain remote access to banking systems using a malware called SmokeLoader. So the alert from CERT warns the attackers are using spam email with the subject bill/pay with a zipped archive attached. Once again, not the best thing to do is if you're opening zip files that are pretending to be invoices. That should be one red flag for you there. The attacks have been linked to a group identified as UAC-0006, which has been around for a while. They've been around since 2013. The attackers attempt to steal authentication information, such as your credentials or certificates, and then they pretty much go after financial transactions in accounts controlled by the victim. Now, the zip file is a polyglot file, meaning that it is a single file that can be interpreted as a multiple file formats. So it's hard to tell when you're looking at it. It consists of a decoy document and a JavaScript file. Now, the name of the file is PAX_2023_AB1058.js. And it uses PowerShell to further download other payloads in which you can really gain persistence on your computer or do whatever else it needs to do. But the main thing it does is downloads a executable file called Portable, which when it runs, launches the SmokeLoader malware. And once SmokeLoader is running, it injects malicious code into the processes that are going on your computer to start stealing that data. So it is very important to do. So what can you do to protect yourself? Well, one, don't open emails you're not expecting to, especially if it's a .zip file. Unless you're expecting that .zip file, do not open anything that's .zip. You can block the JavaScript loader from running by restricting the launch of Windows Script Host, which is wscript.exe on PC. And there are additionally other IOCs you can find on the CERT website. So do that, protect yourself. But number one, and which always comes down to, please make sure you are taking time to really make sure that email you're about to open is what it says it is. For our final story this week, goes into, I'd consider it phishing adjacent. So it's malicious QR codes. And it's one of those things that have become more popular recently. And I am always still very hesitant to scan any QR code. Most likely because I don't know, like, it's not like a web URL you can see. It's something that, only a computer can read, which kind of makes me, a little security paranoid. So, and the bad thing here is that most phones now just have the scanning QR ability built into just the regular camera. And, it's one of those things where, restaurants have them, shops have them, parking areas have them, be able to pay easily. I've seen it in emails now. It's now become something that cyber criminals are starting to utilize to do bad things. So, but the one I'm talking about here ends up being a fake survey via QR code. So the scammers here are putting up QR codes on the glass door of shops, and they urge visitors to fill out a survey for something free. Like, hey, if it's a coffee shop, hey, you get a free small coffee or something along those lines. Now, to complete the survey, a bogus third-party app is downloaded onto the user's device to complete the survey. Number one, this should tell you that immediately there's something wrong. Now, this enables the scammers to take money out of the victim's bank accounts. So that's one way that they are using this to be bad. Now, another one in the news recently was a parking ticket scam in which there was fake parking tickets on drivers' windshields. And they said, hey, you want to pay this real quick? Use this QR code. And they didn't give them any other website to go to. So they naturally just scanned the QR code to pay their ticket so they'd get in trouble. And this was done in San Francisco. So the tickets looked legitimate. But scanning the code would send them to a site impersonating the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, SFMTA, and enter their credit card details to pay, and they pay their bill, and obviously, whoops, the cyber criminals have that. So these are just kind of way that QR scams are starting to move into everyday life. And a lot of this is just based on the fact that QR codes have been around for a while. People are familiar with them, whether you use them or not. During COVID, they were in every restaurant, so it was something that was very easy to kind of see. And, it's very dangerous. And, they're now using this to harvest information, to download malicious apps on your computer, or to make you pay fake bills. So it is crazy. And it's not even just here in the United States. I mean, there was examples in China. And I was reading a FortiGuard article about it. And they were using QR codes to target Chinese-speaking users. They pretend they were from the Chinese Ministry of Finance. And they stole, the credentials of the people who were their victims. So, number one, my biggest thing is do not scan a QR code no matter what if you can avoid it. I don't scan them in restaurants. because you never know, did someone put something on top of, especially if they look like there's a sticker on top of the one that should be there. But in general, make sure that if you have to, that it is something that does not have like something plastered over it or some other kind of indication that it just may not be right. Because that's really dangerous. And you can get yourself in a lot of trouble by giving that information out or having it download information onto your computer. But number one advice, please just do not scan any QR codes. Thank you everyone for listening. This is the end of the show. Please make sure you check out our website, cybersecurity.newsbyte.com, for the show notes, as well as links from where we got these stories so that you can find out more if you want it. You can always send me an email, Emmy at jimguckin.com, if you want to reach out to me and talk. I'm always available. You can find me on my website, jimguckin.com, which once again has more information about me if you're curious. Don't forget to subscribe and comment. Whatever you want to do on your podcast streaming service of choice helps the show grow. We really appreciate it. And make sure you stay safe online, and we'll talk again next week.
You've been listening to the Cybersecurity News Byte with Jim Guckin. Learn more about our show at cybersecurity.newsbyte.com.